As the Christmas season approaches each year, millions of people around the world begin to talk excitedly about Santa Claus, the jolly figure with the red suit, flowing beard, and a sleigh full of gifts. Children wait for him, adults joke about him, and the entire holiday atmosphere seems to revolve around the magic he represents. Yet, strangely, very few people ever stop to ask who Santa really is, where he came from, or how this familiar image became so deeply rooted in celebrations across different cultures. Many imagine Santa simply as a fictional character created for fun, but behind the cheerful smile and bright red coat lies a long, fascinating history filled with real people, ancient traditions, cultural changes, and stories that have evolved over hundreds of years. Understanding Santa's origins means traveling far back in time, long before Christmas looked the way it does today, and uncovering the human stories, myths, and historical transformations that eventually shaped the modern figure we now know and love. This journey reveals not just how Santa came to be, but also how different societies passed down values of kindness, generosity, and celebration across generations. Our story begins centuries ago, long before malls, Christmas movies, and holiday jingles existed. In the early days, Europe was filled with winter traditions that were deeply connected to survival, hope, and community. Winters were harsh, cold, and unforgiving. People depended on one another to make it through the darkest months of the year, and because of this, many cultures developed legends and festivals centered on generosity, warmth, and the idea of bringing joy during difficult times. One of the first and most important threads in Santa's history begins with a real person, a man whose actions were so kind and impactful that stories about him spread far beyond his lifetime. This man was Saint Nicholas, a bishop who lived around the 3rd and 4th century in a region known today as Turkey. Even though he lived more than 1,700 years ago, Nicholas became famous across the ancient world because of his extraordinary kindness, especially toward children, the poor, and people in need. Nicholas grew up in a wealthy family, but his parents raised him to understand the importance of compassion. After they passed away, he inherited a large amount of money, yet instead of using it to live in comfort, he chose to dedicate his life to helping others. One of the most famous stories tells how Nicholas secretly helped a poor father who couldn't afford dowries for his daughters. In those days, lacking a dowry could destroy a girl's future, and the father was desperate. Nicholas heard of the family's situation and, rather than embarrass them or reveal his identity, he went to their house at night and dropped bags of gold through their window, or according to some versions, down their chimney where the coins fell into stockings or shoes that had been left near the fire to dry. That small detail, coins falling into stockings, would later become one of the strongest traditions associated with Christmas. From that point forward, Nicholas was known as a protector, a giver, and someone who brought hope quietly and humbly. His reputation spread across Europe, and for centuries people celebrated him as the patron saint of children, sailors, and travelers. Communities told countless stories about how he rescued people from danger, helped those in trouble, and always found ways to give without expecting anything in return. The day set aside to honor him, December 6th, became one of the most loved celebrations in many countries. On this day, children would leave their shoes outside their doors, hoping St. Nicholas would pass by in the night and leave small gifts, fruits, or sweets. The celebration was joyful, warm, and filled with a sense of mystery, and it was this combination of kindness and wonder that slowly shaped the early idea of a gift-giving figure during winter. As generations passed, the legend of St. Nicholas traveled from place to place, and with every journey the story changed slightly, mixing with local beliefs and winter traditions. In some regions, he was imagined as a gentle bishop dressed in robes with a long beard. In others, he was accompanied by helpers or guardians who represented good and bad behavior. And as Europe continued to evolve, the story of St. Nicholas evolved with it, sometimes becoming more magical, sometimes more symbolic, but always keeping the core idea of kindness at its heart. Over time, these small changes laid the foundation for the transformation of St. Nicholas into something completely new, something that would eventually become the modern Santa Claus known around the world today. As the centuries moved forward, the legend of St. Nicholas did not remain confined to one region. Instead, it traveled across borders and oceans, carried by traders, sailors, priests, and families who passed down his stories to their children. But as the legend spread, something interesting happened. Different cultures began blending their own winter traditions with the story of Nicholas, shaping him into new forms. Europe at this time was a place where storytelling was one of the strongest ways to preserve tradition, and so every village, town, and country added its own flavor to the character that would one day become Santa Claus. This cultural mixing would slowly transform Nicholas from a historical bishop into a more magical and mystical figure associated with winter celebrations. In Northern Europe, especially in places like Germany and the Netherlands, winter already had deep-rooted customs long before Christianity spread. These regions had stories of mysterious figures who roamed the skies during the coldest nights of the year, watching over people or rewarding children for good behavior. One of the most powerful influences came from old Germanic and Norse traditions, where people believed in the wild hunt, a ghostly procession led by the god Odin, who rode the skies on an 8-legged horse. Odin was sometimes described as a wise, bearded figure who brought gifts during the winter festival known as Yule. He was said to travel invisibly through the cold winter nights, and children would leave out boots filled with straw or carrots for his magical horse, hoping to be rewarded with small treats. These traditions didn't replace Saint Nicholas, but rather intertwined with his story, creating a character that felt both religious and mythical. By the Middle Ages, Europe was full of variations of Nicholas. In some places he appeared as Sinterklaas, a tall, serious bishop wearing red robes and holding a staff. In other places he was accompanied by a helper who represented consequences for misbehavior, an idea meant to remind children that Nicholas rewarded kindness, not selfishness. Over time, these traditions became yearly events filled with parades, performances, and celebrations. Families prepared special foods, set out shoes for gifts, and told their children the stories passed down through generations. These customs kept Nicholas alive in the hearts of people, and they created a continuous chain of storytelling that would eventually reach new continents. That next step in Santa's evolution came with the movement of people across the Atlantic. In the 1600s and 1700s, European settlers, especially Dutch families, began traveling to the Americas, bringing their language, culture, and traditions with them. Among those traditions was their celebration of Sinterklaas. In their new communities, the Dutch still honored him every December, and his name, Sinterklaas, was pronounced in a way that English speakers began turning into Santa Claus. At first, Santa Claus was still very similar to the old European version. He wore bishop robes, traveled with a horse, and delivered gifts on December 6th. But as America grew and different cultures blended, new storytelling opportunities emerged. Writers, poets, and illustrators saw Santa as a perfect character to shape into something unique, something that represented not only tradition but also imagination. The 1800s in America became a major turning point. Christmas itself was evolving from a simple religious observance into a warm, family-centered holiday. People wanted stories that reflected joy, generosity, and celebration, and Santa Claus began to shift into that role. Instead of being a strict bishop, he was slowly imagined as more cheerful, more magical, and more focused on children. He began to lose the formal robes and instead gained a friendlier look that appealed to families. Writers started describing him traveling not on horseback but in a sleigh drawn by reindeer, an idea inspired partly by northern folklore and partly by the snowy landscapes of winter in the northern United States. At the same time, newspapers and magazines began printing stories about him, spreading the new version of Santa faster than ever before. This period marked the beginning of Santa's transformation from a regional tradition into a global figure. His story, once rooted in ancient Europe, was now being molded by artists and storytellers who saw him as a symbol of kindness, joy, and the magic of childhood. And as the stories grew, so did the excitement around him. This set the stage for the most dramatic transformation of all, the creation of the modern Santa Claus we know today, with his bright red suit, flying reindeer, and home at the North Pole. As the 19th century unfolded, Santa Claus was standing at a crossroads. He had already evolved from the ancient figure of Saint Nicholas and the winter spirits of Northern Europe into a friendlier, warmer character in America. But the Santa we know today, the one instantly recognized across the world, still did not fully exist yet. What happened next was one of the most remarkable examples of how stories, art, and culture can reshape a legend into something entirely new. It was during this time that writers and artists played a huge role in polishing Santa's image, taking bits and pieces of old traditions and molding them into a unified, magical figure who captured the imagination of millions. One of the most important influences came in 1823 with the publication of a poem titled A Visit from St. Nicholas, which most people today know as The Night Before Christmas. Written anonymously at first and later attributed to Clement Clarke Moore, this poem completely changed how people imagined Santa. Before this poem, ideas about him varied widely. Some saw him as tall, others short, some as serious, others as joyful. But Moore painted a picture that was so clear, so charming, and so playful that it immediately became the foundation for the modern Santa. He described Santa as a jolly old elf who traveled in a magical sleigh pulled by 8 reindeer, landing gracefully on rooftops before sliding down chimneys with presents. He gave Santa-specific reindeer names: Dasher, Dancer, Prancer, Vixen, Comet, Cupid, Donner, and Blitzen, making the story feel alive and full of personality. This poem was read in schools, homes, and churches, spreading rapidly across America and setting a new standard for who Santa was supposed to be. But the transformation didn't stop there. Illustrators soon joined in, giving Santa a visual identity. In the mid-1800s, a cartoonist named Thomas Nast began drawing Santa for Harper's Weekly. Nast's drawings took Moore's descriptions and brought them to life. He imagined Santa as a plump, cheerful man with a round face, twinkling eyes, a generous belly, and a long white beard. He dressed him in fur-lined clothing, carried a large sack of toys, and gave him a workshop filled with elves. Nast also introduced the idea of Santa living at the North Pole, a location that felt mysterious yet fitting for a magical figure associated with snow and winter. For the first time, Santa had a permanent home, far away from the everyday world, hidden in icy landscapes where imagination could run free. Nast's drawings were published for over 20 years, each one adding new details. Some showed Santa reading letters from children, introducing the idea that kids could write to him with their wishes. Others showed him keeping lists of who had been naughty or nice, an idea that encouraged good behavior during the holiday season. Before long, children everywhere were imagining Santa watching over them throughout the year, preparing gifts, and traveling across the world on Christmas Eve. This blend of creativity, warmth, and humor made Santa feel both magical and familiar, someone who belonged to every family and every child. Meanwhile, Christmas itself was changing into a more joyful and domestic celebration. In earlier centuries, the holiday had been noisy, wild, and filled with public feasts and festivities. But during the Victorian era, people began focusing on family gatherings, gift-giving, and cozy moments at home. Santa fit perfectly into this new version of Christmas. He became the symbol of generosity, kindness, and the magic of childhood wonder. Parents began telling stories of Santa's visit on Christmas Eve, encouraging their children to leave out cookies, milk, or small treats as a gesture of gratitude. The excitement of waking up to gifts under the tree became one of the most loved moments of the entire year. As the years passed, Santa continued spreading beyond America. Newspapers, books, and magazines carried his image across continents. Immigrants who had arrived in the United States and adopted the Santa tradition soon sent letters and stories back to their families in Europe and other parts of the world. Little by little, the story of Santa, now cheerful, round, and dressed in red, began replacing older local traditions in many countries. Instead of separate winter figures and characters, Santa became the universal symbol of Christmas joy. But it wasn't only writers and illustrators shaping Santa. In the early 20th century, advertisers, companies, and storytellers saw the potential of using Santa in their work. They used his image in holiday promotions, artwork, and decorations, which helped strengthen and spread a unified picture of Santa even further. Everywhere people looked, cards, posters, toys, and store windows, they began seeing the same friendly figure. This constant reinforcement made the modern Santa not just a character from stories, but a global cultural icon recognized by almost everyone. By this point, the transformation from Saint Nicholas to Santa Claus was almost complete. Santa was now a magical, joyful giver of gifts, traveling the world in one night, living in the North Pole, surrounded by elves, and guided by reindeer. Yet there were still more changes to come, changes that would permanently cement Santa as the king of Christmas celebrations worldwide. As the 20th century approached, Santa Claus was already becoming a beloved figure, but the world was changing rapidly. Technology, communication, transportation, and global culture were expanding in ways people a century earlier could never have imagined. These changes created new opportunities for Santa's story to spread further than ever before. The invention of photography, the rise of printed advertisements, and the growing popularity of Christmas cards began shaping how people saw the holiday season. In almost every corner of society, Santa's presence started to grow stronger, gradually becoming an essential part of Christmas celebrations across the world. In the early 1900s, Santa began appearing regularly in department stores. These stores were becoming massive shopping centers where families could buy everything they needed in one place. When store owners noticed how much children loved Santa, they invited actors to dress up in red suits so kids could meet Santa in person. This new tradition became incredibly popular, and soon nearly every large store had its own Santa during the Christmas season. Families would line up, sometimes for hours, just so their children could sit on Santa's lap and tell him their Christmas wishes. This face-to-face experience began turning Santa into something even more powerful, a character who felt real, approachable, and part of everyday life. The excitement of meeting Santa became one of the highlights of the holiday season. At the same time, Christmas parades began gaining popularity in cities across America. These parades brought enormous crowds to the streets, and Santa was almost always the final grand figure to appear. One of the most famous of these events was the annual parade launched by Macy's in New York City. When Macy's introduced Santa at the end of the parade, it became a highly anticipated moment that symbolized the official beginning of the Christmas shopping season. Newspapers reported on the parades, radio stations broadcast them, and families made it a holiday tradition to watch Santa's grand entrance every year. This public celebration helped strengthen Santa's connection to Christmas in the minds of millions. But perhaps the most significant influence on Santa in the 20th century came from mass media, especially radio, film, and eventually television. Christmas songs, radio shows, and holiday broadcasts often featured stories about Santa, reinforcing his personality and traits. He became the center of radio dramas where announcers pretended to talk to the North Pole, giving updates about the elves, toys, and reindeer. These broadcasts made Santa feel like a real, living character whose world people could imagine vividly even without seeing it. When movies became widespread, Santa's presence grew even more. Films began showing him flying through snowy skies, preparing gifts with his elves, and spreading joy to children around the world. These visual interpretations gave him movement, voice, emotion, and personality, making him feel even more alive in the minds of viewers. One of the biggest turning points in cementing Santa's modern image came through commercial advertising. Although many companies used Santa in their holiday promotions, one brand in particular became famous for portraying him so consistently that people almost forgot he once looked different. Artists created images of Santa that showed him as warm, friendly, round, cheerful, and always dressed in bright red. These pictures were printed on posters, calendars, billboard signs, and magazines. They spread across continents, reaching people who had never seen earlier drawings of Santa. And even though Santa had already been drawn in red clothing before, this new wave of artwork standardized the look so strongly that the red-suited Santa became the universal version everybody recognized. His friendly smile, rosy cheeks, and joyful presence were shared everywhere, creating a unified global understanding of who Santa was. But Santa's evolution wasn't only happening through pictures. It was also happening through traditions at home. As the modern world grew busier, families looked for special moments to connect, and Christmas became one of the most treasured times of the year. Parents began reading bedtime stories about Santa to their children. They taught them to hang stockings on Christmas Eve, inspired by the old legend of Saint Nicholas dropping coins into shoes and socks. Families baked cookies and left milk for Santa, creating a playful ritual that children looked forward to every year. Many homes placed gifts under the Christmas tree only after the children went to sleep on the night before Christmas, helping preserve the sense of mystery and excitement surrounding Santa's arrival. These traditions strengthened the belief that Santa wasn't just a character in books. He was a magical figure who visited homes, understood children's wishes, and spread happiness everywhere. As global travel increased, Santa's story crossed oceans and continents once again. Countries that had never heard of St. Nicholas or European winter traditions began adopting Santa Claus as a symbol of Christmas joy. In some places, Santa blended with already existing traditions. In others, he became the main gift bringer, replacing older customs. Even regions with warmer climates embraced the snowy imagery of Santa, seeing him as a symbol of festive spirit rather than weather. His universality made him a bridge between cultures during the holiday season, a figure everyone recognized, regardless of language or background. By the mid-20th century, Santa Claus had become more than just a character. He had become a symbol of generosity, imagination, celebration, and childhood wonder. He represented the idea that kindness could spread across the world, that joy could be shared, and that traditions, no matter how old or how changed over time, could still unite people. And yet, Santa's story still had more room to grow. New forms of media, new celebrations, and new interpretations would continue shaping him in the decades to come, ensuring that Santa remained timeless, magical, and beloved by each new generation. As the world moved deeper into the mid and late 20th century, Santa Claus continued to evolve, finding new ways to stay present in people's lives as technology, entertainment, and culture rapidly transformed. The world was changing faster than ever. Television became a household standard, global communication improved, and holiday celebrations were influenced by new trends, new forms of creativity, and the growing desire for shared global experiences. Yet in the middle of all this change, Santa remained a constant figure, adapting effortlessly to every new era and becoming even more deeply woven into the fabric of Christmas tradition. Television became one of the biggest forces shaping how families around the world experienced Santa. During the 1950s and 1960s, holiday programs were broadcast nationwide, and Santa became a regular character in seasonal specials, children's shows, and animated films. Productions like Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer and Frosty the Snowman introduced entire generations to new stories connected to Santa's world. Rudolph, originally created as part of a holiday campaign, grew into a cultural icon in his own right, symbolizing uniqueness, courage, and perseverance. These television specials used stop-motion animation, colorful characters, and uplifting messages. And because they aired every year during December, they became part of the holiday rhythm for millions of families. Children grew up watching Santa's adventures not just through books or imagination, but through moving images that made his magical world feel alive and real. At the same time, Christmas music was becoming one of the strongest forces shaping holiday spirit. Radio stations played Christmas songs throughout December, and Santa's name appeared in many of the most popular tracks. Songs like Here Comes Santa Claus, Santa Claus is Coming to Town, and Up on the Housetop helped spread a playful image of Santa, cheerful, musical, and full of energy. These songs reinforced the idea that Santa wasn't just a distant mythical figure, but someone who was actively preparing, traveling, watching, and bringing joy into homes. Music made Santa portable. Children could hear him mentioned everywhere they went, from shops to schools to family gatherings. With the rise of film in the latter half of the century, Santa became a central character in big-screen stories as well. Movies explored his world with imagination and emotional depth, showing him as more than just a gift giver. Some films portrayed Santa as a wise guardian, others as a humorous figure caught in modern-day challenges, and others as a symbol of belief and hope. These films created narratives that went beyond the simple idea of Santa delivering presents. They explored themes of faith, family, generosity, and the magic that comes from believing in something bigger than ourselves. Through film, Santa took on new layers of personality, sometimes serious, sometimes funny, but always centered on kindness and wonder. Meanwhile, Global commerce was making Christmas more widely celebrated across different cultures. International companies began decorating their stores with Santa imagery during December, and advertisements across the world featured Santa's bright red clothes and joyful smile. Even in countries where Christmas was not traditionally celebrated, the image of Santa became recognizable. He started to appear on posters, holiday cards, and children's books everywhere. People adopted him not only because of religious or historical connections, but because he represented universal values: giving, love, warmth, and joy. Santa became a symbol that transcended cultural boundaries. But Santa's evolution wasn't only happening through entertainment and advertising. Families themselves were reshaping traditions at home. As people moved to different countries, migrated to new cities, or blended cultural backgrounds, Santa became a shared figure that helped bring different communities together during the holiday season. Parents began creating personal family rituals around Santa. Some wrote letters to him with their children, some tracked his journey on Christmas Eve through radio updates or early digital tools, and some organized small family performances or readings to make the night feel special. These traditions strengthened the emotional connection between Santa and the holiday experience, making him feel not like a distant legend, but like a familiar presence returning every year. The late 20th century also brought something completely new: the internet. As people began using computers and going online, Santa found yet another way to stay relevant. Early websites dedicated to Christmas allowed kids to send emails to Santa, track countdowns, and read stories about him. Suddenly, Santa wasn't just part of books, TV, or film. He was part of a digital experience that children could interact with. This interactivity made Santa feel more reachable and more personal, as if he were adapting to each child's world in real time. As the century closed, Santa Claus had become one of the most recognizable figures on Earth. His face, voice, and story were familiar to billions, regardless of cultural background. Yet his core essence remained the same as it had always been, representing kindness, generosity, and the joy of giving. It was a remarkable transformation, stretching across nearly 2,000 years, reflecting the power of storytelling and human imagination. And still, Santa was not done evolving. A new age, the age of global technology, social media, animated universes, and worldwide commercialization, was about to take him even further, shaping him into a figure that could exist not just in stories and images, but in digital and virtual worlds as well. As the world entered the 21st century, Santa Claus stepped into an entirely new era, one shaped by advanced technology, global interconnectedness, and new forms of storytelling. Everything about daily life was changing. People were spending more time online, communication was becoming instant, and entertainment was available on demand in every home. Yet through all these changes, Santa continued to evolve in ways that allowed him to remain just as magical, just as beloved, and just as present in the lives of families across the globe. This was a period where Santa moved from simply being a character of tradition into becoming a global digital icon whose presence could be felt in dozens of different forms throughout the entire holiday season. One of the most powerful tools shaping Santa's modern image was the rise of the internet and social media. In the early 2000s, websites began creating interactive experiences centered around Santa. Children could send digital letters, watch animated clips of Santa's workshop, or play online Christmas games. These simple digital experiences helped children feel connected to Santa in a way earlier generations never could. Over time, these online experiences grew more advanced. Companies and creators introduced Santa trackers, special websites that claimed to follow Santa's sleigh across the world on Christmas Eve. Millions of children would gather around their computers or tablets, watching Santa move from continent to continent, imagining him soaring through the night sky. This kind of interactivity brought Santa's world into the digital age, blending imagination with technology in a way that captured the excitement of the season. Social media platforms expanded this connection even more. Suddenly, Santa was everywhere, appearing in short videos, animated clips, holiday messages, and even digital conversations. Artists began sharing their own interpretations of Santa, each adding a unique cultural or creative twist. Some depicted Santa in traditional red, others imagined him in new styles, and some even reimagined him through animations, illustrations, or modern fashion designs. This constant stream of content made Santa a part of everyday digital life during the holiday season. People across the world could share Santa-themed memes, filters, photos, and videos, creating a festive atmosphere that stretched far beyond physical decorations or traditional celebrations. As digital entertainment evolved, film studios and animation companies also expanded the storytelling universe around Santa. New animated movies portrayed him not only as a gift giver, but as a leader, a guardian, and a larger-than-life character with complex emotions and responsibilities. Some films placed Santa in heroic roles, others explored his origins, and some created entire imaginative worlds where Santa worked alongside mythical figures from different cultures. These modern interpretations allowed Santa to become more flexible. He could be humorous, adventurous, powerful, or gentle depending on the story. This variation helped new generations connect with him in ways that felt relevant, fresh, and exciting. Even video games began incorporating Santa, sometimes as a playful character, sometimes as part of seasonal events. Children and teenagers could see Santa inside the virtual worlds they loved, lifting the idea of Christmas into realms of fantasy, adventure, and creativity. This shift showed just how adaptable Santa had become. No matter where storytelling moved, Santa followed, becoming a part of every new form of entertainment. While media and technology helped Santa grow, real-world celebrations also continued to evolve. Cities around the world expanded their Christmas traditions, organizing elaborate festivals, lighting ceremonies, and winter markets where Santa made grand appearances. Many places began celebrating Santa runs, or charity marathons where thousands of people wore Santa costumes to raise money for good causes. Schools hosted holiday concerts, malls created magical experiences to bring families together, and streets were decorated with glowing Santa displays. These community traditions helped reinforce Santa's role not just as a fictional character, but as a symbol of unity and joy, someone who brought people together regardless of age, culture, or background. With travel and migration becoming more common, Santa Claus began blending with traditions from different cultures in fascinating ways. In countries with strong local holiday customs, Santa sometimes appeared alongside traditional gift-bringers or festive characters. In others, he took on new names or adopted local clothing styles, showing how flexible and universal his story had become. Children everywhere recognized his smile, his generosity, and the excitement he represented, even if the details of his appearance changed slightly from place to place. Santa had become a global figure, not tied to one region or belief system, but shared across borders as a symbol of celebration and kindness. In this modern age, Santa also became a reflection of the world's growing awareness of inclusivity and representation. Artists and storytellers began creating diverse versions of Santa, portraying him with different skin tones, cultural outfits, and backgrounds. These portrayals helped children from all corners of the world see themselves in the magic of Christmas, reminding everyone that Santa's spirit belonged to all people, not just one place or tradition. This shift helped strengthen the idea that Santa was not simply a character rooted in one historical figure, but a universal symbol shaped by centuries of storytelling and community. By the time the world fully embraced the digital age, Santa had successfully bridged the gap between ancient legend and modern imagination. Whether appearing in traditional stories, online animations, virtual events, or family traditions at home, Santa continued to represent the same timeless values: kindness, generosity, and the joy of giving. His evolution proved that legends do not fade. They adapt, grow, and transform with the people who carry them forward. And Santa, perhaps more than any other figure in holiday history, had mastered the art of staying magical in every era. As the 20th century moved forward, Santa Claus began to take on a role far greater than any earlier storyteller or illustrator could ever have imagined. He was no longer just a figure rooted in old legends. He was becoming a universal symbol of generosity, imagination, and holiday spirit. Someone who existed in songs, films, books, parades, and in the collective dreams of children around the world. This transformation wasn't sudden. It grew slowly but steadily as each new form of media embraced Santa and shaped him further. Radio began airing Christmas specials where narrators described Santa's laugh, his warm personality, and the excitement of Christmas Eve. Families gathered around their living rooms to listen together, forming memories tied to his story. Then came film, and with it, an entirely new dimension. Early Christmas movies portrayed Santa as a magical and gentle grandfather figure who could unite communities, inspire kindness, and remind people of the warmth of family during difficult times. These portrayals were especially powerful during eras like the Great Depression, when hope was scarce and families needed something uplifting to believe in. The power of cinema only grew stronger as decades passed. Suddenly, Santa wasn't just talked about. He could be seen, heard, and experienced in ways previous generations couldn't imagine. Animated films gave him detailed expressions, colorful outfits, and fantastical workshops filled with elves and talking toys. Live-action films added emotional depth, portraying him as someone who could solve conflicts, mend relationships, and gently guide children toward kindness. With every new movie, more elements were added to the Santa mythos. The idea that he keeps a list of children around the world, the notion that he can enter houses through chimneys, the belief that his sleigh can travel at impossible speeds thanks to Christmas magic. None of these ideas came from ancient myths. They were creations of modern storytelling. But the world embraced them so sincerely that they became essential pieces of who Santa Claus is today. Beyond movies, Santa became a constant figure in holiday advertising, though not in the overly commercial way people sometimes criticize. Many companies use Santa not just to sell products but to symbolize togetherness, warmth, and the feeling of giving. Santa appeared on posters, billboards, in shopping malls, and on television screens, each appearance cementing him further into the rhythm of the holiday season. For many children, visiting Santa in shopping centers became a yearly tradition, a magical moment where they could sit on his lap and share their hopes, dreams, and Christmas wishes. Even though everyone knew it wasn't the real Santa, the experience still felt special, like a small doorway into the world of Christmas imagination. As Santa spread through Western culture, other countries began blending his image with their own traditions. In Japan, he became part of a festive season filled with lights and celebration. In some parts of Africa and South America, Santa's story adapted to reflect local customs and environments, showing that the myth was flexible enough to belong to many different cultures. Wherever he appeared, Santa wasn't seen as foreign. He was embraced as a symbol of joy and giving, someone who belonged to everyone. What made him even more powerful was the way his image crossed generations. Grandparents told stories about the Santa they knew growing up. Parents retold the same stories with new details. Children listened with shining eyes, adding their own imagination to the legend. It formed a chain of storytelling that connected families across time, keeping the spirit of Santa alive. In a world that often feels fast, complicated, and stressful, Santa became a reminder of something simple yet deeply meaningful. The idea that kindness matters, that giving brings joy, and that even the smallest acts of generosity can brighten someone's world. Modern culture didn't just preserve Santa. It amplified him, using every new medium to remind people of the values he represents. And because of this, Santa evolved from a historical bishop to a worldwide symbol of hope who appears every December to lift spirits, spark imagination, and bring people closer, even if only for a season. As the world entered the digital age, Santa Claus faced yet another transformation, not one created by poets or painters, nor by films or radio, but by the rise of technology that connected millions of people instantly. This new era didn't weaken the Santa legend. Instead, it gave the story fresh life in ways earlier generations could never have predicted. The moment the internet became part of everyday life, Santa's presence expanded into new platforms and new forms of storytelling. For the first time, children could track Santa's journey across the world through online maps that updated in real time, letting families follow him as he flew from one continent to another. What began as a fun idea quickly became a global tradition, with millions of children checking online every Christmas Eve to see where Santa's sleigh might be. Families gathered around screens not just for entertainment, but for the magical feeling of being connected to something happening beyond their homes, as though the entire world was celebrating one story together. Social media also brought Santa into daily life in a completely new way. Traditional Christmas cards were replaced by digital messages filled with animated Santa hats, glowing sleighs, and cheerful holiday greetings. Videos of Santa reading messages, sharing wishes, or encouraging kindness circulated every December, helping the legend remain personal even as technology changed how people communicated. In many places, parents arranged virtual Santa calls, where their children could speak to a live Santa actor through a video screen. For kids, the experience felt real and magical, proving that technology could enhance imagination rather than replace it. Digital artists created countless new versions of Santa: futuristic Santa, classic Victorian Santa, Santa in warm climates, Santa in snowstorms, and even Santa in animated gaming universes. Each creative version showed how adaptable the myth had become, flexible enough to fit into any culture, any style, any generation. Meanwhile, the holiday season itself became a global celebration shaped by the digital world. People who lived far apart could now share Christmas moments instantly through live streams, photos, and messages. Santa, who once belonged mainly to Europe and North America, became a universal holiday symbol recognized almost everywhere. Even in countries that didn't traditionally celebrate Christmas, Santa appeared in decorations, shopping displays, movies, and online content simply because people loved the sense of joy and unity he represented. He wasn't tied to one religion or one culture anymore. He became a symbol of giving and goodwill, values that resonate with nearly everyone, regardless of their background. In a world where people often face challenges, pressure, and uncertainty, the Santa story provides a shared moment of warmth that crosses borders effortlessly. At the same time, the digital age offered a chance to return to the heart of the Santa legend: kindness. Many online communities began organizing charity events inspired by Santa's spirit. People donated toys, clothes, food, and money to families in need, often anonymously, just like the generosity of St. Nicholas centuries ago. Hashtags encouraging acts of kindness spread every December, inviting people to help strangers or brighten someone's day. Schools and youth groups encourage children to give instead of just receiving, teaching them that the real magic of Santa lies in being caring, thoughtful, and generous. This modern interpretation brought the legend full circle. The digital world helped revive the ancient core values that first made Nicholas of Myra a beloved figure: compassion and giving. As technology advanced further, Santa entered virtual reality, video games, animated series, and interactive apps that allowed children to explore his workshop, meet elves, and even help prepare gifts. These new platforms didn't replace traditional Santa stories. They expanded them. Each year added new layers of creativity, new interpretations, and new ways for people to experience the holiday spirit. And through all of it, the myth continued to thrive because the world truly wanted it to. Technology may change, cultures may evolve, and storytelling styles may shift, but the emotional heart of Santa Claus, the desire to spread joy and warmth, remains powerful. In the 21st century, Santa Claus has reached a level of recognition and influence that no single storyteller, illustrator, or filmmaker could have predicted. He is no longer confined to Europe, North America, or even predominantly Christian cultures. He has become a universal symbol of holiday joy, imagination, and generosity. Today, children in bustling cities, small towns, and remote villages all know Santa in one form or another. Whether he appears in a snow-covered sleigh, on a tropical beach, or in a colorful animated video, Santa's presence unites people across continents in shared celebration. His story has transcended borders, languages, and traditions, becoming a vessel for universal values: kindness, selflessness, hope, and the delight of giving. Modern families continue to create their own Santa traditions at home, each variation adding to the richness of the legend. Some parents hide gifts around the house for children to discover on Christmas morning, echoing the secret generosity of St. Nicholas centuries ago. Others leave cookies and milk, believing it strengthens the magical connection between their children and the jolly figure in red. Letters to Santa remain a cherished tradition, now enhanced by online platforms that allow children to send messages digitally. Communities organize Christmas parades, public light displays, and Santa-themed charity events, reinforcing the idea that Santa isn't just a character. He is a living embodiment of joy and goodwill, inspiring real-world action. In many countries, shopping malls hire Santa actors to meet children, creating an interactive experience where young imaginations can feel fully immersed in the magic of Christmas Eve. These experiences connect the historical legend of Saint Nicholas with the imaginative, larger-than-life Santa that children see in books, films, and media today. Santa's influence also extends to education, storytelling, and even psychological development. For generations, children have learned about values like empathy, generosity, and thoughtfulness through his story. Being naughty or nice is not merely about compliance, but about understanding the impact of one's actions on others. This moral framework, subtly woven into the Santa mythos, teaches responsibility and social awareness in a way that feels playful and magical rather than prescriptive. Psychologists and educators note that the wonder of Santa fuels imagination, creativity, and critical thinking, showing that legends can shape minds as effectively as they shape cultures. Globally, Santa has adapted to diverse cultural settings while retaining his essential characteristics. In Europe, he often appears alongside traditional winter gift-bringers or folkloric companions. In Japan, he is part of the lights, music, and festive joy of Christmas celebrations. In Africa and South America, he merges with local customs, sometimes wearing regionally inspired clothing or delivering gifts in ways that resonate culturally. In every case, Santa remains instantly recognizable. A cheerful, round figure in red, with a long white beard, a twinkle in his eye, and a heart full of generosity. This consistency is remarkable, considering the vast number of cultures and traditions that have embraced him. It is a testament to the universality of the ideas he represents: hope, joy, kindness, and the magic of giving. Even as new technologies emerge, from augmented reality to immersive gaming and interactive apps, Santa continues to thrive. Children can now explore his North Pole workshop virtually, help elves craft toys, and track his sleigh in real time on Christmas Eve. These innovations do not diminish the traditional wonder of Santa. They amplify it. Each generation experiences him in ways that feel modern and exciting, while still connecting to the centuries-old story of Saint Nicholas, the secret giver who inspired legends, folklore, and eventually the magical figure beloved around the world. In a sense, Santa has become timeless, a bridge between past and present, history and imagination, reality and fantasy. Perhaps the most remarkable aspect of Santa's story is its endurance. Over nearly 2,000 years, he has evolved from a humble bishop performing acts of quiet generosity, to a folkloric figure riding across Europe, to the cheerful, red-suited Santa of modern media, and finally to a global symbol of holiday spirit in the digital age. Each transformation preserved the essence of kindness and giving, proving that stories, when nurtured by imagination and culture, can transcend time and geography. Today, children and adults alike look forward to Christmas with excitement not just because of presents, but because of the feelings Santa represents. A promise that joy, generosity, and wonder are alive in the world, no matter the challenges we face. As we reach the present day, the story of Santa Claus continues to capture hearts across the globe. From his humble beginnings as Saint Nicholas in ancient Myra, to the evolving folklore of Europe, and finally to the modern, cheerful figure known around the world today, Santa represents something far greater than just gifts or celebrations. He embodies hope, generosity, and the power of imagination, qualities that remain as relevant now as they were centuries ago. Children wake each year with wide eyes, families gather around trees and decorations, and communities come together, all sharing in the magic that Santa brings. He has transcended time, culture, and geography to become a unifying figure, a reminder that joy and kindness are universal languages. The beauty of Santa's legend is that it is ever-evolving. Every child adds their own imagination, every parent passes down a version of the story, and every culture shapes him in ways that reflect local values. Whether he's flying across snowy skies in a sleigh pulled by reindeer, appearing in a vibrant parade, or popping up in digital apps and online games, Santa remains a symbol of wonder and delight. Even in an age of rapid change and technology, the core of Santa's story. The idea that one person can spread happiness and generosity continues to inspire millions around the world. His story is proof that legends are not static. They live and breathe through the people who tell them, believe in them, and keep the magic alive year after year. And here's the most important part. Santa's story is not just for children. It reminds adults too that kindness, imagination, and the joy of giving are timeless treasures. In a world that can sometimes feel divided or rushed, the spirit of Santa offers a moment of pause, a chance to reflect on what truly matters. Family, generosity, and believing in something magical, even if only for a little while. That's why, no matter how much the world changes, Santa continues to be an icon of hope, a reminder that magic exists in both small and grand gestures, and that joy is contagious when shared with others. If you've enjoyed this journey through the history and evolution of Santa Claus, there's so much more magic waiting for you. Make sure you subscribe to the channel to join us for more incredible stories, fascinating legends, and adventures that span history, culture, and imagination. Hit the notification bell so you never miss a story, and leave a comment down below telling us what your favorite part of Santa's story is, or share your own family traditions. We'd love to hear them. And remember, every time you share kindness, you're carrying forward the true spirit of Santa Claus, keeping the magic alive for the next generation.